Hello all, I am the Holland Phantom, and for today's video I'm going to be going over a request topic suggested by user Soff Moth, who asked to see weird combo decks throughout the game's history. Okay, so right off the bat, weird is a subjective term that can mean different things to different people. So in this video, I'll be defining weird combo decks as unexpected or creative, and for combos to classify as unexpected or creative, it means that they cannot come from the same set or archetype, as cards that come from the same place are usually designed to have obvious synergy. So for them to qualify for this list, they have to come from different sets. Okay, so if all that sounds confusing, trust me, it'll make more sense as we go along. Starting off with number 1, we've got a deck with Absol Prime from Triumphant, Metagross from Supreme Victors, and Miasma Valley from Platinum. This deck focused on dealing as much damage to basic Pokemon as soon as they were played to the bench, with Absol's Eye of Disaster, which activated when Absol was in the active spot, dealing 20 damage to any basic Pokemon coming into play. And Miasma Valley would also deal 20 damage to newly benched basic Pokemon, with only Grass and Psychic Pokemon being immune to its effects. So with these two cards, basic Pokemon would immediately take 40 damage as soon as they came into play. Metagross's Gravitation Pokebody would also reduce the max HP of all Pokemon by 20, meaning with all three cards together, any Pokemon with 60 HP or less would automatically be KO'd as soon as they came into play. So for a lot of decks in the format, a lot of their Pokemon would just be unusable. Cards like Cyndaquil from Reshifusion decks, Magnemite and Horsey from Megazone decks, and Tepig from Emboar decks, and without access to their important basic Pokemon, these decks would struggle to get set up. And for any Pokemon that managed to survive getting to the bench, like Reshiram and Zekrom, the highest HP basic Pokemon at the time of their release, they would be within range to be easily knocked out by Absol's Vicious Claw attack, hitting them for 70 damage. At number 2, we've got a deck that was pretty simple to use, but it was also a lot of fun. It featured Shuckle, a Heart Gold and Soul Silver promo, Emboar from Black and White, and Forretress from Legends Awakened. In this deck, Emboar would use its Inferno Fandango ability, which is basically like Blastoise' Rain Dance Pokemon power, but for fire Pokemon, being able to attach as many fire energies in hand to any Pokemon on this side of the field, to quickly accelerate fire energy onto Shuckle. And then it would activate Shuckle's Fermenting Liquid Pokebody, allowing it to draw a card for each energy attached. And once all the energy had been drawn from the deck with Fermenting Liquid, Seeker would be played to pick up Shuckle and all of its energy back into the hand. And finally, Emboar would use its ability again to attach all the energy onto Forretress this time. Forretress' Iron Shell Pokebody would then activate and flip a coin every time an energy was attached. And when it landed Tails, it would deal 20 damage to all Pokemon on both sides of the field, except for itself. So by attaching as many energy as possible through Emboar's ability, Forretress could potentially knock out every Pokemon on the opponent's side without even attacking. At number 3, we've got another deck with Forretress, this time from Neo Discovery. It also used Dark Dug Trio from Team Rocket, and Rocket's Minefield Gym from Gym Challenge. This deck focused on dealing damage without attacking, especially when the opponent switched their active Pokemon. Rocket's Minefield Gym could deal damage when new Pokemon were played to the bench, similar to Miasma Valley, but it required a coin flip when a new basic Pokemon was put to the bench, and if the player got Tails on that coin flip, their new Pokemon would take 20 damage. Forretress and Dark Dug Trio worked in conjunction to deal damage when a Pokemon switched, with Forretress dealing 10 damage to the opponent's new active Pokemon with its Spikes Pokemon power, and Dark Dug Trio potentially dealing 20 damage to the Pokemon that moved to the bench with its Sinkhole Pokemon power if the player got Tails on a coin flip. Forretress' attack Rapid Spin could help disrupt the opponent, as it would hit for 30 damage and then force them to switch their active Pokemon with one of their benched Pokemon. So if the opponent wanted to get their main attacker back up front, they would activate both Forretress and Dug Trio's abilities and take more damage upon switching. And the great thing about these powers was that they could stack, so with multiple Forretress and Dug Trio in play, they could deal enough damage to knock out small basic Pokemon like the baby Pokemon before they even got a chance to attack. At number 4, we've got a deck with Alakazam from Expedition, Tentacruel from Aquapolis, and Energy Removal 2. In this deck, Alakazam was the main attacker, using its Synchro Blast attack to deal up to 80 damage, which was enough to one-hit KO some of the main attackers of the format, like Macargo, Scizor, and Exeggutor. But the thing about Synchro Blast, though, was that it needed Alakazam to have the same amount of energy cards attached to itself as the opposing Pokemon did, otherwise it only dealt 20 damage. Now matching the same number of energy cards as the opponent could be tricky, but could be accomplished more consistently with Energy Removal 2 and Tentacruel, as Energy Removal could reduce the number of energy cards attached to the opponent by discarding them, and Tentacruel had the Strange Tentacles Pokepower to increase the amount of energy on the opponent, as it could attach discarded energy cards to the opposing Pokemon as long as they had fewer energy cards than your main active Pokemon. Alakazam from Skyrish could also be used in this combo, as it had the Energy Jump Poke Power, which could move an energy card from one Pokemon to another once per turn, so it could move an energy card away from the attacking Alakazam, or onto it if it had too much or too little energy. At number 5, we've got a deck with Mew Prime from Triumphant, Rhyperior Level X from Legends Awakened, and Delcatty from Platinum. In this deck, the strategy revolved around using Mew's Pokebody Lost Link to use Rhyperior's Hard Crush attack. And what these cards would do was Mew would send Pokemon to the Lost Zone from the deck with its See-Off attack, so its Pokebody would copy those Pokemon's attacks, and in this case, Rhyperior Level X was the target for Mew's ability. Rhyperior had a good attack in Hard Crush, but it was hampered by being the Level X version of a Stage 2 Pokemon, which basically meant that it was a Stage 3 Pokemon because in order to get Rhyperior Level X out normally, a player would have to start off with Rhyhorn, and then evolve it into Rhydon, then to Rhyperior, and finally until its Level X form, all of which could take multiple turns. But with Mew's Lost Link, only a single turn would be used to send Rhyperior to the Lost Zone, and afterward, its attack could be used repeatedly simply by playing more Mew. And as for the attack itself, Hard Crush was a free attack that would discard the top 5 cards of the player's deck and then deal 50 damage times the number of energy discarded, so it could deal anywhere between 0 to 250 damage. But it could be inconsistent, which is where Delcatty came in, as it had the Power Circulation Poke Power, which would place 2 discarded energy cards on top of the player's deck, which could then be discarded by Hard Crush, guaranteeing at least 100 damage. And this could be further boosted by using a second Delcatty to increase the damage to 200, one-hit KOing everything in the format. At number 6, we have a deck with Brock's Ninetales from Gym Challenge, and Dark Weezing from Team Rocket. This deck revolved around attacking with Dark Weezing's Mass Explosion attack, as what it did was deal 20 damage to the opposing Pokemon times the number of Coughing, Wheezing, and Dark Weezing the player had in play. So normally this attack had a damage cap of 80 damage because of the rule stating that only 4 copies of a Pokemon could be used in a deck, but with the introduction of Brock's Ninetales, that damage cap could be increased. And this is due to Ninetales' Pokemon power Shapeshift, as what it did was it allowed the player to play any evolved Pokemon onto Ninetales, so Ninetales could then use that Pokemon's attacks as its own. So by using Shapeshift to play Dark Weezing onto Ninetales, the player had extra Coughing to put onto their bench, increasing the power of Mass Explosion up to a total of 120 damage, enough to one-hit KO most Pokemon in the format that weren't resistant to it. Mass Explosion did also come with the side effect of dealing 20 damage recoil to each of the player's Coughing and Wheezing, but this could be blocked by using Transparent Wall, which shielded benched Pokemon from attack damage for a turn, and Special Metal Energy could be attached to the active Dark Weezing to protect it from its own attack as well. At number 7, we have a deck with Araados from Ancient Origins, and Eradicate Break from Breakpoint. This deck had a simple strategy for knocking out most Pokemon in a single turn, and it was accomplished by using Araados' Poison Nest ability, which would poison both players' active Pokemon, though Eradicate would be immune to the poison because of its base form's Antibodies ability, protecting it from special conditions. After the opponent's active Pokemon was poisoned, Eradicate Break would use its Super Fang attack, which would place enough damage counters until the opponent only had 10 HP left, and once the turn passed, the poison would inflict the final 10 damage to take the knockout. So between these two Pokemon's powers, they could take KOs on most Pokemon no matter how much HP they had, though it's important to remember that Araados' Poison Nest ability would not work on Grass-type Pokemon, so a follow-up attack would have to take the KO on the following turn. Faded Town was also used to place 20 damage on Mega Pokemon between turns, just in case Araados is unavailable to inflict poison. At number 8, we have a deck with Primate from Fire Red and Leaf Green, Dark Slowking from Team Rocket Returns, and Slowking from Unseen Forces. In this deck, Slowking would use its Poke Power Item Search to search out any Pokemon tool from the deck once per turn, which could then be discarded by either Primate or Dark Slowking with their attacks. Primate's attack was Toss, which dealt 30 damage times the number of tools discarded, and Dark Slowking's attack was Litter, which dealt a base 20 damage and could then discard up to 2 tools, increasing its attack by 30 for each tool discarded. And for late game, when all the tools had been discarded, regular Slowking could switch into an attacking role, using its Aftermath attack, which dealt 20 base damage and then an extra 10 damage for each discarded tool, up to a total of 60 additional damage, ensuring that the deck had consistent attackers in all stages of the game. At number 9, we have a deck with the Moongus from Plasma Freeze, and a Watchog from Emerging Powers. In this deck, the idea was to set up a lock in which the opponent could not access any of their useful cards by shuffling away cards from their hand and controlling the cards drawn from the deck. To begin, a Moongus would use its Astonish attack to shuffle away 3 random cards from the opponent's hand, and once the opponent had lost most of the cards in their hand, Watchog would use its Watch Check attack to rearrange the top 5 cards of the opponent's deck, ensuring that they never got any good cards, all the while chipping away at the opposing Pokemon's HP. Victini was also used in this deck to reflip any coins from the Mungus and Watchog's attacks, just in case it landed tails. And finally at number 10, we have a deck with Mew EX from Legendary Treasures, Shedinja from Roaring Skies, and Frozen City from Plasma Freeze. In this deck, Mew is a primary attacker, and thanks to its ability Versatile, which let it use the attacks of any Pokemon in play, it would copy Shedinja's attack Hopeless Scream, which is also the name of my emo band back in high school. Hopeless Scream was an attack that needed a single colorless energy to deal 50 damage times the number of damage counters on Shedinja, but because Shedinja only had 30 HP, the max damage it could deal on its own was 100. But when used by Mew, the damage output could be increased dramatically, as Mew had 120 HP, so at maximum, Mew could swing for 550 damage for only a single energy. Now realistically, it would be difficult to get Mew down to such a low HP without getting knocked out, but with the help of Rainbow Energy and Frozen City, 3 damage counters could be placed in a single turn, as Rainbow Energy placed a damage counter when it was attached, and Frozen City would also place an additional 2 damage counters whenever an energy was attached to a Pokemon. So with all these cards working together, Mew would be dealing 150 damage for only 1 energy. And that was my list. Are there any weird combo decks that I didn't cover? Let me know about them down in the comments below. And be sure to like, subscribe, and share this video to help this channel grow and reach new viewers. Alright, that's it for now. Thanks a lot for watching, and until next time, this is the Holland Phantom logging out.